Dr. Zeus once said, "Don't be sad that it's over, be happy that it happened." F you, Dr. Zeus. The Dragon and the Wolf, episode 7, the season finale, call it what you will. We have finally reached the culmination of this installment of Game of Thrones, and it wasn't just Jon Snow that crammed a lot in. As with every last episode of Thrones, they like to strike a nice balance between closure and intrigue, but given just how highly they'd raised the stakes, that is going to be no mean feat. Mind you, neither is trying to condense it all into a critical appraisal looking at the good and the bad points, but we've all got to play the hand we're dealt, I suppose. So, for the last time this season, Michael, the ups, please. The downs. Let's do this. Maybe it really is all cocks in the end. Putting aside the fact that might be my favourite line of the season, in a season which has been relatively light on good lines as well, that's a really, really nice appraisal of both this episode and season 7 as a whole, TBQH. Now, wouldn't have killed them to have mentioned that the Unsullied had made it back from Castle Rock in one piece, but here we are, Jaime and Bronn overseeing the defences at King's Landing as thousands, tens of thousands of Dany's foot soldiers are joined by thousands more Dothraki screamers. We also get a shot of Euron's enormous fleet sitting idle in Blackwater Bay as our party sail in to join them, and we get a lot of really nice shots of King's Landing looking imperious in the landscape. Right from scene 1, it all feels momentous and important without needing a flashy, spectacular battle scene to give it weight. Now, for a season finale, that's exactly how you want to set the scene, so straight off the bat, that's an up. There's a reason for all this grandstanding, of course, and that's because all of our major players are here to discuss the small issue of 100,000 White Walkers about to make their way into Westeros. Guest of honour being Bitey McBiteface in a wooden box. Now, with all the little introductions and reunions and arrivals, there is a lot to love about this scene. Euron and Tyrion, Tyrion and Pod, Tyrion and Cersei, Cersei and the White, Dany arriving on Drogon. But I think we're all honest here, the Hound manages to steal this scene twice. His no hard feelings, honest chat with Brienne was actually a surprisingly nice bit of closure to a dynamic that I previously wouldn't have thought needed it, and now I really, really, really want to see him and Arya reunited, if only briefly. But getting the Hound and the Mountain to square up to each other was f***ing poetry, lads. It's not how it ends for you, brother. You know who's coming for you. You've always known. I mean, that's not quite Clegane Bowl yet, but I absolutely loved that. I loved it all the way up. Even if that wasn't enough of a reason to give it an up, the maneuverings between the characters here are absolutely beautiful. You know that Euron isn't putting his tail between his legs and leaving the show. You know that Cersei doesn't give a shit about Jon taking up arms against her. You know there's so much more to it than that, but you don't know what yet. We change tack here now in classic style as the show shifts from the majesty of major political squabblings to a nice dark room where two characters can very personally get their claws into each other. Spectacle 1 minute, subtlety the next, when seamlessly done, is always an up. I didn't think about the world. As soon as it opened its mouth, the world disappeared for me right down its black throat. Lena Headey's influence has waned in the last couple of episodes after arguably being the major player in the first few, so to have her back in such a prominent role for the season finale is wonderful, especially as she is still killing it in every scene and still doing that incredible emoting through her teeth thing. I think maybe that does something for me. Is that weird? That's weird. Anyway, while Peter Dinklage does occasionally give her a run for her money in this regard, as an acting presence, she is occasionally the greatest thing about this show. Fight me in real life. And I'm sorry, but there is no f***ing way she's actually pregnant. She dangled that carrot in front of Jaime to get him on side, and now she's teased just enough of it to let Tyrion think he worked it out for himself. Girl has sold them both a dream, and fair play to her. Back to the Dragon Pit now, and a scene that was probably designed in a lab to be 50% resolution to the issue of the Truce and the Great War, and 50% just Dany daring Jon to get her pregnant. You all know what foreshadowing is, yeah? Like, you know how that works? If she hasn't got a broody little bun in the oven come season 8, I will buy each and every one of you a drink. As you know, I'm not wild on the whole mad incest on telly thing, despite the fact every else seems to be, but I'm still going to give this scene an up, and you can thank Lena Headey for that. Or Cersei, the lines are very blurred for me now. She marches back in, looking humbled, and agrees to help in the Great War. She almost seems desperate and pleading when she says, "When all this is over, maybe you'll remember that I chose to help without any promises or assurances from either of you." Now, I'm a bit of a bastard, so let me tell you personally that if you're ever trying to convince somebody else that you are giving them exactly what they want, the way you sell that is with an undercurrent of worry and reluctance. I f***ing love Cersei, lads, and I kinda hope she kills them all. Next, we finally get away from King's Landing for the continuation to that Winterfell murder plot I love so very much, and Littlefinger is getting his endgame in Sansa's ear. We're going to skip through this for the minute though, because it's so intrinsically linked to their next scene that I can't really score it the way I want to here, so we'll just put a little pin in that for now. Theon Greyjoy was forgiven by Jon, then discovered his superpower is not having a cock, and beat the ever-loving shit out of a playground bully. Huge up. We've now entered the home straight in what will probably be the second most satisfying character arc of the entire show, and I, for one, hope he absolutely mullers Euron when he finally catches up with him. He doesn't get a lot of praise, but I think it's finally start time to giving Alfie Allen the credit he's due in this role. The guy has done arrogance, duplicitousness, cowardice, complete emotional breakdown, and now bravery, and he's done them all absolutely brilliantly, in my opinion. Fair play, mate. Let's get a pint in sometime. As promised, straight back to Winterfell, and this one's quite tricky because I'm having to balance my own feelings about the scene with a slightly more objective, critical viewpoint, by which I mean I absolutely loved it, but I read James's down for it in the article, and having thought about it, he's absolutely spot on. Here we are, finally getting the resolution to Season 7's most divisive subplot, with Arya slashing the throat of Littlefinger after Sansa turns on him, and despite the fact that I cheered loudly into an empty room, those actions neither redeemed nor explained the story. If Sansa's just changed her mind, then why? I mean, having Bran next to her implies he was involved, but if she's gone for him for advice now, why didn't she go a lot sooner? If she figured it out during Littlefinger's motives game, how was she then able to convince Arya, who hadn't listened to her at all thus far? If they were working together the whole time, why were all our interactions so creepy and hostile and weird? Why did everybody believe Littlefinger was guilty? Just because Bran, a weird kid who claims he can see through time because of a tree, said he was. It's a complete mess. Basically, they really wanted Arya to kill Littlefinger in the season finale, and they've worked their way back from there. It's a criticism you can level at a lot of the show this season, but I think it's most obvious here. So ultimately, while it's a twist I personally enjoyed, it's not one that worked at all. Back to King's Landing now, where Cersei shows her hand to Jaime, pun absolutely intended. She tells him that she's got no intention of making peace with her enemies. She's simply going to let the monsters kill each other, then take back what's left using the Golden Company that she actually sent Euron to go and get. I think I'm in love. That's enough for Jaime though, who decides he's going to have to go and complete his redemption arc somewhere else, and I'll be honest, I thought he was going to be killed doing so. The way he dared Cersei to set the mountain on him looked to be such a callback to Tyrion doing it earlier in the episode, and yep, that had me. He does make it out though, probably because it's actual affection between the two and not merely because she tactically wants him to stay alive for a bit longer, and then departs north. Wherever he ends up, he's going to end up back here at some point, and that's the first bit of place setting we get for Season 8. Up. Hey, Sam's back though, and he's brought with him the most glaring example of what's been wrong with this season so far. A scene so hugely devoid of logic and sense that it actually makes you slightly angry to watch it. I'm the three-eyed raven. I can see things all over the world. In the past, in the present, in the future. Oh, by the way, why are you here? You f***ing tell us, mate. You're the with the f***ing superpowers. Exhibit B, Sam's then able to correct him about the relationship between Rhaegar and Lyanna. Like, just to clarify that means f***ing Sam retained more f***ing information from talking over the f***ing top of his f***ing wife one night than f***ing Bran can from being able to see through f***ing time. Down. You can't serve up a hugely important flashback to the past and mix it in with a huge development in the present and expect the audience to emote correctly after you slap them in the face like that. That is bad. Still though, Not as bad as incest. Right, I know I said last week that when they finally hooked up, I was going to give it a down, and I stand by that, but I am going to level things up slightly here. As a concept, they are bad. I don't want to be all pearl-clutching suburban internet mam about this, but come on. Ooh. But giving us the revelation that Jon is definitely the legitimate heir to the throne at the exact moment we see that he's fallen in love with someone whose entire motivation is believing that they are, is a great moment. In spite of Bran, in spite of the fact she just f***ed her nephew, that's an up. And hey, we knew winter was coming, so I suppose you should have all expected a few inches of snow. Hey! Here we are then. All the stories are done for season 7. All the pieces are in place for season 8. All that's left is to show us how the army of the dead are getting into Westeros and fuck me clean in half. This episode didn't need a huge visual set piece to make it a good one, but ending things with the wall crumbling down was measured to perfection. And they even managed to wrap up one of the most annoying plot holes in the entire season by doing so. We weren't really sure why it had taken the White 7 episodes to get from Hardhome to Eastwatch, and to be honest, that was one of the major things that made the whole time versus distance issue seem that much more stupid. But as the Night King flew in on Viserys and melted that big old hole in the wall, it all finally made sense. He'd set a trap, bided his time, waited for everybody to bring a dragon to him, and everybody, you and me included, had fell for it. We end with a very, very humbling up. Just think that bears repeating, to be honest. An undead Ice King just brought down a 700-foot wall using the magical blue fire of a resurrected zombie dragon that he pulled out of a lake specifically to ride into battle. This is me symbolically pouring one out for all our boring half-alive friends who do not watch this show. As endings to the season go, it was a perfect reminder of precisely why we're all so invested in the show. It can go from the power squabbles of would-be queens to the backroom meetings of conniving siblings, some who legitimately hate each other, some who just look like they do, and then still make a believable transition into a monumental war between the living and the dead. Season 7 hasn't been without its faults, of course, and I think when we look back at it all as a complete body of work, it won't be seen as anywhere near as watertight or as well written as the standards it set for itself. But when viewed episodically, like TV used to be, it still feels incredibly clever and increasingly jaw-dropping. I think you have to try really, really, really hard to be disappointed by it. It isn't a down, but it's a huge bummer that we're going to have to wait a year at least before we get the conclusion to all of this. The living will fight the dead. Zombie bears and giants will tear into entire legions of men. Dragons will do battle overhead, while behind the scenes, some of TV's most compelling characters fight, bicker, squabble, betray, and murder to make sure they survive it all. And then there'll be us, examining every single detail of it all. I'll be there, 2 a.m. in the morning, loving every goddamn minute of it. And hopefully you will be too. Until then, well, you know the drill by now. Please do tell us what you thought in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You have one more episode of Whatculture to come, so please do join us for that, as well as on Twitter at WhatCultureGOT. For now though, I just want to say a huge, genuine thank you to everybody who has tuned in week on week to watch me prattle on about all of this, and an even bigger one to both James and Michael for lending their incredible talents to the whole project. So, for one last time, I've been Adam from Whatculture.com, third of his name, and I'll see you somewhere else.